Hello, everyone, and welcome. Yep, sorry to be a couple of minutes late. I got held up, of all things, on Twitter, which I haven't used in a very long time. Yeah, just please give me a 1 in the chat to let me know that I am audible, because you know how good I am at messing up the audio. So yeah, I see. Hello, we've got XYZ and Horse. Welcome. Good to see you both. Give me 1 second. So let me just minimize that. Yeah, it looks like we are live. Okay, so just fix up my camera. Quinn Blessed, welcome. Yeah, that's a little better. Just adjusted my camera there. And yeah, let's see. Happy to be here. Great to hear that. Mike Simao, welcome. Good to see you. Horse, of course. Tickety boom, and the Lord richly bless all. Thank you. XYZ, good to see you too. Yeah, guys. So hold on. Let me just switch over my camera. So I will pick up where we left off. We were discussing John MacArthur, this guy who can't logic or deliberately mislogics, whichever it happens to be. And let me just disable my phone from interrupting me. Disconnected from my computer. Okay, now, yeah, what's been happening is, Eric Braun, welcome. Joel Thomas, I was saying, forgot to ask in the last stream, but what happened during that stream that didn't happen? You know, yeah, I don't know either. For some reason, YouTube hid the stream from me. It was supposed to happen on Monday, right? Was it yesterday or Sunday? Yeah, really weird. I was supposed to do the stream, and I'd set the date, I'd set the time, and then for whatever reason, YouTube hid the stream. It wasn't showing up. It didn't show up until like the next day when I was like looking, like where'd the stream go? And then it showed up for some reason in my content list, and I had to reschedule it. I have no idea what happened. It was just the weirdest thing. So yeah, just crazy stuff. Roseanne Rossi, welcome. So yeah, YouTube has done some weird things to me, but this is like one of the weirdest things that has happened. Yeah, so for those of you who are new, very welcome. Let me just put that there so you can see this. So lately, I have decided to... so thanks to the audience, I spent the money to take out a 1-year subscription to today, in fact, this morning, to X, formerly known as Twitter. And yeah, so Robert Spencer was involved in a discussion, of course, this whole Palestine thing and Israel. And of course, there's this guy, Omer Brakat, who has been making statements with no evidence, making assertions. So I started providing detailed screen captures in my comments. So I started providing lengthy, actually just go to my profile, so I started providing detailed screen captures like this, right, with evidence to counter everything that he was saying. He was merely providing opinion. And yes, Roseanne, you're very welcome. I'm glad you enjoy these. So what happened is he got very upset. So he agreed to actually so he agreed. So I said, look, buddy, if you want to do a live stream, okay, if you want to prove yourself right and me wrong, by all means, you can do a live stream with me. And he agreed. He says, yes, we can schedule a live stream. List down the topics you want to talk about, and I will be very happy to discuss. So I set the date, the 16th. I said Saturday the 16th. I, DM'd him, and he failed to respond. Not only after I tagged a whole bunch of people, has he now started walking back his willingness. He's now denying that there's such a thing as the Sharia. There's only the Quran. Nothing else exists. And of course, he refuses now to have, but this is like in 4 years, this is the only experience I've had. Muslims will talk big, and they will refuse point blank to discuss the Sharia publicly. It is not legal for them to do so. It is treason. It is punishable by death. They're revealing secrets and weaknesses of Islam. They're not allowed to do that. On top of that, this guy, the Muslim apologist, you may remember this guy, Menj, who was arrested for kiddie porn some time back. He's claiming that he received no communication from me whatsoever about my invitation to him and to Paul to actually discuss Sharia live. They've both claimed, Paul and Minj have obviously both claimed that we have nothing to fear from the Sharia. The Sharia is perfect, holy, and beautiful. And he actually, remember, he made a comment on my last post, which said, "You summoned me," right? So he knew exactly what it was. I replied to him. I've sent many, many responses to him, right? Which he's ignored. And now he claims, "Please don't make up stories. I've not received any communication or email or even a comment from you regarding this." How can the guy write to me on a post which is directed at him, a post that tags him, specifically directed to him, right? He writes to me, he answers me on a post that I wrote to him and say that I've never contacted him, I've never written anything, he knows nothing about it. He gave me a reply on it. So understand, you must understand, Islam, lying is obligatory. Remember this. Lying is obligatory. It is not optional. Lying is something that Muslims must do. Okay? Please understand this. So, yeah, they're all in denial. So this is just how this goes. Okay, so let me go back to YouTube. Actually, so let me just go to my channel. So what I've done is I've set here, so I'm sorry about this one, but this previous one, YouTube hid the stream. It did not show up for me for some reason. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about this topic on Sunday. So I'm busy preparing notes. It'll probably be 2 or 3 episodes. We need to speak about Soviet Fakestein, right? This is going to be very, very important. And what is odd is if you look at the Soviet flag, the crescent and the star, and you look at the Muslim flag, the crescent and the star, isn't that a little odd? Or was that just me seeing a connection there? But hey, who knows? Who knows? Who knows? Pedro, welcome. Okay, guys, so maybe I should jump into the topic, but we're going to be talking about this, and we might discover that there's a lot more to Palestine and its Soviet connection. And don't forget, it's Nazi connection. The Fakestinians were devout Nazis in World War II. Don't forget that. They were Nazis. Mein Kampf is a very popular book in that part of the world, right? It sells very well. So bear that in mind, all right? Okay, so this is something, and thanks XYZ. Glad you like it. So we're going to be talking about Soviet Palestine, and we're going to see just what connections the Palestinians might have to the KGB and to the Soviet plan to destabilize the West and to start doing so by destroying Israel. So we'll see if the woke left are really just communists doing what communists do. All right. And yeah, so people, please, maybe you could politely, very politely, just remind the Muslim apologist that he has actually commented on a post which I wrote for him, to him, and that, so now he's claiming he doesn't know about it. So, yeah, but this is normal. This is par for the course. I don't expect any different from him. So, yeah, okay, let's finish up where we left off on this, okay? So if you want this, at the end of the previous show, I do 10 minutes or so, I discuss this, I go through the conversation. And so now we're going to speak, hopefully I will finish here today, on logic, reason, and non-contradiction. Mein Kampf popular with a bunch of Jew haters. Yes. Believe it or not, horse. Right, so let's continue on this topic. Right, so based on the discussion that we had, remember, a woman asked him, if Jesus died for all, then how can he claim that Jesus only died for the elect, for some? Because this is the Calvinist belief. Now, this is not only the Calvinist belief, it is Martin Luther's belief. Calvin got this from Luther. Luther got this from a bunch of heretics from the 5th century, 6th century. Right, so this particular heresy was condemned by the Catholic Church in the 520s, the 590s, in the 1100s or the 1200s, and again in the 1600s. But of course, Martin Luther decided to revive this particular heresy, and so did Calvin decide to revive this particular heresy called predestinarianism. Yeah, the Calvinist God is Satan, correct. But so is Martin Luther's God. You must understand, so is Martin Luther's God. This is no different in the Lutheran doctrine, as written by Luther. So he introduces what's called a true dichotomy or false dilemma. So remember, check the previous show, this is the last 10 or 15 minutes where I go through this, okay, and I show what it's about. His starting premise is a Calvinist one. right? His argument includes Calvinist assumptions. He's not looking for truth. He's looking to push an agenda. So John MacArthur poses the question, did he die for everyone or no one? This presents a dichotomy. Pick one, choose one, right? What if there's more than two answers? What if there's 5 potential answers? What if there are 3? What if there are 4? Understand, he's making you make a false choice. He believes that Jesus died not for all, only the elect, and only the elect benefit from that atonement. This contradicts the orthodox belief, and I mean smaller orthodox, that Christ died for all sinners, and he's disagreeing with that fact. He equates propitiation with universal salvation. So he argues that if Jesus died for everyone's sins, then everyone goes to heaven. I bet you that not one person here right now, not a single one of you, believes that Jesus died for all sins and therefore everyone goes to heaven. No one believes that. I don't think any of you believe this. I don't believe it. No one believes this. I don't know of anyone who is an Orthodox Christian. I don't mean big O Orthodox. I mean who's Orthodox in their beliefs. Believes that, right? Jesus died for all men, so we all can be saved if we choose salvation, if we choose to accept him, right? So it's not like he died and therefore no sins matter, no sins count, no behavior matters, everyone goes. No. This is what John MacArthur is claiming, that we believe. This is false. He's presenting a straw man. So while Christ died for sins, salvation is contingent on faith and acceptance. We have to separate the offer of atonement from its reception. If I offer you a gift and you don't accept it, that's up to you, right? I made the gift, right? So understand, Jesus offered a gift. Whether you accept it is up to you. Whether you go without the gift is entirely up to you. But the fact that I bought gifts doesn't mean everybody gets gifts. Simple. Overgeneralization. He then suggests, but since we know that's not true because there's a hell and many are headed to hell, we know that he didn't actually die for everyone. So understand, he has now created a straw man, he's created a false argument, and now he's working on a false argument. This is a false conclusion. Not everyone will accept salvation. God is still just. Wickedness is still punished. So understand, God is still just. God might be forgiving, but he's also just. So he might be merciful, but he's also just. So you can't simply claim one thing and that this wipes out all other aspects of God's character. Christ's sacrifice was not a cover for deliberate wickedness. Understand, this is where we get the claim, once shaved, always shaved. Man, I have to shave like 3 times a week, okay? I wish I could shave once. I don't like having a carpet on my face, but I have to shave or I do grow a carpet, and that's not something I prefer. False equivalence. The argument suggests a potential atonement activated by faith diminishes the atonement, making it sound as if the atonement's effectiveness is inherently diminished by requiring faith, right? So it's interesting, the fact that you have to have faith and you have to have belief and you have to accept, somehow that diminishes God, diminishes Jesus' sacrifice. So you have to do nothing and Jesus will just come and serve you hand and foot and carry you off to heaven no matter what. That's a really odd idea. So however, this assumes a specific interpretation of the mechanics of atonement. So he's got a very strong agenda. So what's interesting is that Calvinists call God just, but also attribute evil to him. I know, it's utterly contradictory, but once you have a basis of error and you're building on a basis of error, you're going to build more errors. Hopefully not a flying carpet. No, I wish. So the argument assumes that atonement must be actual as opposed to potential, without sufficiently establishing why a potential atonement that requires faith to activate is necessarily inferior or ineffective. He doesn't explain his argument, so he's just baffling you with BS and he's running on, okay? The Calvinists also say you can choose. Well, Calvin doesn't say that. Calvinists might say it. Calvin doesn't say that. Understand? I have this much interest, this much in what Calvinists say. I am interested in what John Calvin said. Now, if a Calvinist disagrees with John Calvin, are they a Calvinist? If a Calvinist says that John Calvin is wrong, are they a Calvinist? If Calvin claimed to be perfectly correct, inspired by God, inspired by the inner testimony of the Holy Spirit as a mouthpiece for God, right? And his doctrine is the one and only true faith. And this is what the claim is. Martin Luther claimed to have the one and only true faith. Joseph Smith, the one and only true faith. Then Calvinists are either heretical or John Calvin is wrong, in which case, why did they break away from the Catholic Church and make up a bunch of nonsense? Do you understand? This is a serious problem. Calvinists say you are predestined, but you can choose. I don't give two hoots what Calvinists say. Calvinists say a lot of stupid things. We are interested in what John Calvin said. I've discussed that in 4 episodes. Well, 2 episodes. I did 2 series on John Calvin, 4 episodes. You can have a look at those. But Calvin is the Calvinist here. He's the important Calvinist. Yeah, so now you've got a splinter group from a splinter group from a splinter group. Understand? You have a breakaway from a breakaway from a breakaway of a breakaway. So what makes you the one true group? If you disagree with the other group, you contradict the other group, and yet you are the one true faith. How can you have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1,000 groups that disagree, and they all are the one true faith? That makes no sense at all. That is complete nonsense. Understand? That is trash. Semantic ambiguity. There's an ambiguity surrounding the meaning of actual atonement. The premise is that Jesus bore our sins in his own body on the cross. This is taken to necessarily mean actual atonement for the elect only. How did he get to that conclusion? However, the definition of actual atonement is the belief that Jesus' death on the cross actually reconciled humanity with God. It doesn't mean that Jesus only died for the elect. It's that Jesus reconciled humanity with God. He conquered death. So, understand, he is now misinterpreting this, possibly deliberately. He can't be that stupid. And error increases as the breakaway groups get further from the source. And that is true, because now we have breakaways from breakaways from breakaways from breakaways from breakaways. Circular reasoning. Sorry, Lute. Yes, you're right. I was just saying it's a contradiction. Yes, it is a contradiction. And when Lutherans don't follow Luther very well, they had to reject some of Luther's teaching. Luther claimed to be a prophet. Don't forget, higher than the Pope. He claimed to be speaking directly from Jesus. Right? He was speaking, Jesus was talking through his mouth. That's Luther's claim here. And if Luther was wrong, then Luther was lying. Then these Lutherans owe us an apology. Someone's wrong here, right? Circular reasoning. Towards the end of the discussion, John MacArthur states, and those who believe are those who were given life and regeneration by the Holy Spirit, because they were chosen before the foundation of the world. Interesting. Your works don't matter. Your deeds do not matter. Your sins do not matter. I thought sins mattered, but according to him, God decided before the foundation of the world, this guy's going to hell, this guy's going to heaven. Does it matter what they do? No. This line of reasoning assumes the conclusion that the atonement was only for the elect, which is the point under debate. This is called sophistry. It's lying by another name. It is not seeking truth. Sophistry is the art of never being wrong. It is the art of winning an argument, undermining an argument. Yeah, when someone's from a Reformed Baptist church, the Baptist church was reforming Catholicism, supposedly, and now you've got a reformation of the reformation of the reformation. Yes. No consideration of counter-arguments. The argument does not address or refute potential counter-arguments. He simply dismisses them. So counter-arguments can include scripture that support universal atonement or conditional atonement based on the response of free will. There are other verses which say the opposite to what he's claiming. Understand, he's ignoring those things. So his theological argument is premised on a very specific interpretation. He doesn't accommodate the full scope of what is in the Bible on atonement. He makes multiple assumptions, and he supports only a very particular theological stance, right? And it's Calvinist, obviously. He doesn't consider or address alternative theological viewpoints, which are perfectly valid given the evidence. And also, the structure of his argument could be strengthened by him saying, hold on, here's one argument, here's the evidence, here's my argument, here's the evidence, let's look at that. What he does is he uses a bunch of word salad. This is not an argument. So, faulty logic. His conversation contains logical inconsistencies. He presents false dichotomies. He begs the question. He uses circular reasoning. This weakens his argument, right? His conclusions are not necessarily poor, but are contingent upon accepting certain theological premises. So the premises are assumed before they are proved. Understand? He's putting the cart in front of the horse here. This means he has a predefined bias, a very strong bias. So if you don't accept the premises, the conclusions are obviously flawed and unsupported, right? So he's got to twist the evidence to fit his bias, to fit his conclusion. So the conclusions are reliant upon this assumption, the series of assumptions, which are not proven. Manipulation of language. There's a lot of semantic ambiguity, particularly around the term actual atonement. So his conversation uses this term in a very specific way, that is not aligned with its use in other theological contexts. He redefines the terms. Muslims do this, atheists do this, and sadly, we discussed already how with Calvin and Luther and the early reformers, they created a form of disputation, which is sophistry designed to win arguments, not designed, they called it scholasticism, they called it Protestant scholasticism. It is completely different from the scholasticism of the Catholics, which was designed specifically to find truth by being rigorous and detailed in finding truth. This was designed to win arguments, to redefine terms, and thus to win arguments. All right, so this use of language can be viewed as manipulating the term to fit a certain doctrinal conclusion. So I've discussed, again, all of this in detail prior. Look at my discussion, part 2 of this series on Luther. I explain exactly the kind of scholasticism that Protestants use, which is designed to manipulate language to win arguments. The Southern Baptists do actually base a lot of their faith in just being anti-Catholic, so anything goes. In fact, Baptists have made, of the groups that I've looked at so far, Baptists have made the broadest appeals to heresy to justify their beliefs by saying that, look, these guys in the 6th century and these guys in the 11th century and these guys in the 9th, and utter heretics. I mean, not even Christian, not even remotely Christian. And Baptists like, those guys didn't like the Catholics either. We're with them. And like, these are heretics. These are Gnostics. These are insane people. But they're Christians, according to the Baptists. So yeah, it's weird. Okay, so he's using language and reasoning to advance a very specific biased viewpoint. All right, you guys can read this later. I'm not going to get into all of this, but I think I've made my point. So we need to avoid logic traps. We have to be systematic. The scholastic method tries to avoid logic traps by advocating for a rigorous and systematic approach to reasoning. Scholasticism emphasizes the importance of logical consistency, coherence, and adherence to the principles of non-contradiction and the law of identity. So in the context of theological discussions, it encourages scholars to carefully examine and analyze all relevant biblical passages. In discussions I've had with Calvinists, they are insisting, no, only these verses, not those verses. You're like, okay, that's also in the Bible, right? Scriptura alona, right? But apparently it doesn't count when they're making arguments that are contradicted by other scripturas. Okay, fine. And you have to consider the full breadth of evidence and avoiding selective interpretations. Yes, it does sound a lot like the same tactics because they have the same method of disputation, as I mentioned. Right? Historically, this is not something that's comfortable for Protestants to look at, but this is something that has to be acknowledged. So by engaging in thorough and comprehensive analysis, scholasticism minimizes the risk of falling into logic traps, such as disregarding contradictory evidence. For instance, they will dismiss or heavily reinterpret James 2 on salvation by works. I need to do a section on that as well, this works, because everything I've seen on YouTube is really unsatisfying. I need to clarify exactly what is meant by works here, because everything I've seen is just, okay, but yeah, not very good. Right? I also have to add that we must look at history. What was the early church position? Was the early church position the Calvinist position, the Baptist position, the Lutheran position? Absolutely not. Check the series I have on the Didache to see how Catholic the first century church was. It was extremely Catholic. Catholic means universal, the same teaching for everyone, not like these guys over here with their views and those guys over there with their views. Right? So, limitations. What about limitations? Can logic explain everything? So we have to look at nuance. Now we're going to try and use nuance in the grammatically correct, non-manipulative way, the way it was intended to be used. And we have to look at grammar. Remember we mentioned grammar, logic, rhetoric. So sometimes there's a less clear distinction between a subject and a predicate. Now, a subject is what the statement's about, right? If you're taking a photo of something, the thing you're taking the photo of is your subject, right? And the predicate is what is being said about, okay? The discussions, the premises, the conclusions you're drawing, the inferences you're making about the subject. So according to the principle of non-contradiction, something cannot simultaneously be wet and dry in the same way. Something can't be completely wet and completely dry at the same time. It can be a little bit wet on the one side and then dry on the other. Understand? But not in the same way at the same time. So grammar can be used to qualify something that might be partly wet or partly dry, to draw further distinctions. Might be wet on one side. A car can be painted blue on one side and red on another. Face paint, black on one side, red on another. You know, and then you can call a 5-year-old a racist. For example, an object can be partially wet and partially dry. depending on the degree of moisture present, also where the moisture is. But for this, we need to have good language. We need good vocabulary. We must know grammar. So grammar indicates the degree of wetness or dryness, such as slightly damp or mostly dry. Vocabulary and meaning becomes critical tools. So, of course, understand meaning, language, is how we understand the world, how we manipulate the world inside of our brains, and how we explain it to others, how we interact with the world. Therefore, it is important for liars to manipulate words. The logos must be manipulated. The words are the logos. The words are how the truth is expressed and understood. So that's why words must be manipulated. So by using these qualifiers like mostly or slightly, we can make distinctions and refine our understanding. Grammar shows the world is not always black and white. There can be degrees of variation in our perceptions and descriptions. Now, this use of grammar does not contradict Aristotle's principle of non-contradiction. The object in question is still either wet or dry to a certain degree, but not in the same manner. In other words, a sponge is not completely wet, completely soaked, and completely dry. No, you could dip half of it, then it's partly wet and partly dry. That does not contradict non-contradiction. We have to resolve ambiguity by widening scope. So let's look at what that means. In logic, the premises are typically formulated in a clear and unambiguous manner to ensure logical consistency. So logic is something, it's a skill we have to learn. We have to think about our words, we have to think about our premises, we have to work on logic. However, it is possible to create an example where the premises are ambiguous and they're not clear. Well, they're clear-cut, they're not clear, leading to uncertainty or contradiction. So yes, you can have a contradiction. How do we deal with this? Let's look at this example. Premise 1, all birds can fly. 2, penguins are birds. Conclusion. So all birds can fly, penguins are birds. In this example, we encounter ambiguity, and potential contradictions. Premise 1 states that all birds can fly, which implies that penguins, being birds, should also be able to fly. However, premise 2 asserts that penguins are birds. This leads to a contradiction because penguins cannot fly. They're flightless birds. So premise 3 is introduced. Now you have a distinction. Actually, the word here we need to look at, we have a distinction. So we must make a distinction. Okay? So there's a word that leftists, there's a word that communists, socialists, there's a word that the woke have banned called discrimination. Discrimination has the same meaning as to make a distinction, to tell the difference between two things. To discriminate is to discriminate between a friend and an enemy. Hello, Francisco. Welcome. Ernesto, welcome. And so understand, this is why they want to get rid of discrimination, so you can't tell the difference. That's how a man can be a woman if you can't discriminate between the two. Personally, I can tell just by looking. Most of the time, at least, I think I'm fairly, but if they don't have clothes on, I can tell pretty quickly. I'm just good like that. But that's making a distinction between men and women, right? That's making a discrimination, right? This doesn't mean you're a bigot or a racist or a phobe. It just means you can tell the difference between two things. That's why they want to get rid of that, so you can't tell the difference and everything's confusing, everything's the same. So, with new data, the ambiguity and potential contradiction are resolved. Penguins don't fly in the traditional sense, but they can fly underwater as opposed to flying through the air. So now we re-understand it. We didn't manipulate the meaning. We did not create new definitions. We understand that they fly underwater. They are aerodynamic, effectively, underwater. So this aligns with their adaptation as aquatic birds. So we have a new context. I don't want to assume. Yeah, I kind of do, actually. I'm actually lesbian. Guys, I need to come out. I'm actually fully lesbian. I only sleep with women. Sorry to break your hearts, guys, but I only sleep with women. I am fully lesbian. I am committed. So yeah, I guess I'm one of the LGBTQ now. That's it. Okay, so yeah, guys, I'm a lesbian. Only sleep with chicks. That's it. Deal with it. Rick Hampstead says Lloyd's logic lessons should be mandatory for all Christians. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Welcome, Lilo Main. Yes, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Thank you. If you like this, if you find this helpful, educational, useful, I'm trying to bring back these classics like logic and thinking, which seems to have disappeared from the world, which has gone insane. Yeah, I'm glad you like this, Rick. So yeah, please do like and share, let people know. Okay, so by including P3, right, premise 3, we maintain logical consistency and we avoid contradictions. This example illustrates the importance of precise and accurate premises. This explains now nuance. You see, we've added a nuance, we've added context, right, to ensure that the conclusions are logically sound. So now let's look at reason versus faith, mystery versus the Trinity, right? So logic and reason versus mystery. We have to look at the Trinity now as an example. Premise 1, God is one. Premise 2, Jesus is God. Premise 3, the Holy Spirit is God. So these premises reflect the belief in the Trinity, which asserts that there is one God who exists as three distinct persons. I'm from Africa. I hope that's 3 fingers. I could be getting this wrong. I had African education, so just be careful. If I hold up like too many fingers, just assume I meant 3, okay? So this asserts there's one God who exists as 3 distinct persons. And this word person I've discussed in the past shows that this word was kind of developed for a theological purpose, right? So we have the Father, the Son, and Jesus, right? And then the Holy Spirit. Father, the Son, Jesus, and Holy Spirit. So someone might question how God can be both 1 and 3 simultaneously. Well, you can't be the same thing in the same way at the same time. We just covered that with the wet sponge, right? You are 1 and 3 in different ways. I'm from Africa too, lad. I can't help you that much. Pedro, well, yeah, so you had the same education. As everyone knows, I've said this before, I attended a school for emotionally disturbed teachers. And I'm the trauma, man. I'm trying to forget. In fact, when I go to the bar, I drink to forget. That's why the bartender makes me pay in advance. So, okay, now someone might question how God can be both 1 and 3 simultaneously. This ambiguity creates challenges in understanding the nature of the Trinity and reconciling this contradiction between the unity and the plurality of God. I've got a short video. It's only 5 minutes long on the Shema. Right? Look up my video on the Shema, where it's a complex unity. Even the Shema, which says God is one, it refers to a complex unity. Thank you, Roseanne Rossi. So it's complex unity. So you have like one bunch of grapes. It's not one grape. One bunch is a collection of grapes, right? That's a complex unity. One marriage, right? A man and a woman. That's a complex unity. It's more than one. So this idea of the Shema was never just a universal singular item. It's a complex unity, right? So theologians have attempted to provide explanations and interpretations to address these concerns. This concept of Trinity is complex. There are lots of interpretations within the framework of Christian theology, but we understand that the argument that the Trinity is a mystery, right? It's a mystery to us. God stands outside of the world. He transcends the world. And within Christian theology, this is a valid perspective. He created the world, time, matter. Everything exists because of him. He is beyond these things. His essence is beyond these things. We are beneath that essence, right? So therefore, within the context of our theology, he stands outside of our representations. This doesn't mean, though, that anything goes. It doesn't mean that he is not predictable. It doesn't mean that he's irrational or illogical. But we understand there are things we don't know and cannot know because we are limited. God is not. So this is based on the understanding that God, being infinite and beyond human comprehension, cannot be fully understood or explained by finite human reasoning. All right. So mystery, though, is not an excuse to deny the use of reason. Many do try to do so, right? So they try and slip anything past the post because, oh, it's a mystery. Note, someone who doesn't understand the Trinity or won't understand it, this can indicate this individual has difficulty separating categories, right? They have a problem separating different categories of things. They don't know how to make distinctions, discriminate. They don't know how to use nuance, right? They don't know how to use logic, or they have an agenda. Typically, they have an agenda. Bart Ehrman has a problem. For instance, he's always saying there were many Christianities in the beginning, lots of Christianities. Some didn't believe in Jesus, some believed in Jesus. Some said Jesus was the Son of God, and some said Jesus was just a hippie skipping through the valleys. He was just a nice guy. Maybe Jesus was gay. I don't know. So, okay, not all of those can be correct. Bart Ehrman is a liar. That's true. Yes, God, most definitely. But these are separate categories. These are contradictory categories. These are not in alignment with standard theology. And Christian theology is not that flexible. It cannot cover all of these cases. Okay? It cannot cover all of these cases. There's only one right answer. Right? So you can't have, back in the beginning of mathematics, 1 + 1 was equal to 15.2. And then another time it was 15.7. And then, of course, it was equal to 3, equal to 5, and equal to 7. And then there were these guys that originally started the whole math thing, and they said 1 + 1 is equal to 2. But, it's like, it could be many of these answers. It really could be. No, really. It's like nonsense. Shut up, Bart. Shut up. Because mathematics is not that flexible. The rules of maths are not that flexible, and the rules of Christianity are also not that flexible. Shut up, sit down, go back to school, Bart. Okay, so the Trinity is a divine mystery. It surpasses human understanding, right? It acknowledges the limitations of human logic, and it emphasizes the transcendence of God. The Trinity is a revelation of God's nature. It goes beyond the bounds of our comprehension and logical reasoning, so we acknowledge a limitation here. By acknowledging the mystery, we can approach the concept of Trinity with humility. We recognize our understanding is limited, and there may be aspects to God's nature beyond our grasp, but God is still order, correct? It might be a mystery, but God is not disordered. God is not chaotic. God is part of the cosmos. Check my previous talk on the cosmos. Perfect order, correct? Yes, Rosanne. So, Barrington Bennett, welcome. Good to see you. Thank you, Lolo Main. I appreciate your assistance, and XYZ as well. Thank you very much for posting these reminders. Yes, so for everyone, thank you. I need to say to those in the audience, thank you. It's because of your donations I was able to this morning. I paid for Twitter Blue, the full premium plus. I thought, I'll start using Twitter. I'll start making a presence on Twitter. I've signed up 14 years ago. I barely used it. I've made the odd random post here and there. But I thought, let me dive in. So because of you, I was able to actually spend the money, which I managed to get a discount. I paid in South African rands, which was way cheaper than any other currency. So I paid in South African rands, which was roughly 2/3 of the price in Poland. And it's also cheaper than the price in US dollars. So luckily, I was able to use my South African phone number to register. Whatever. Anyway, I just paid in South African rands, and I saved 30%, which was great. And now I have a Twitter account. They're obviously going to take about a week to verify to get my blue check, assuming they don't think that my tweets are offensive or something. So, because you know me. But thank you, Lilo Man. So, guys, thank you very much. Thanks to your support, I've been able to do this, and it's really because of you. And I'm really appreciative of all your generosity. Thank you very much. And yeah. So, Lloyd, talking about math, sounds like my South African math teacher back in high school. I mean, come on, South Africa, where to pass maths, you need what, 25%? And you pass your maths exam? Like, right. So you just have to start supporting Elon in his fight. Exactly. That's what I thought also. After this whole scene with Elon, I thought, you know what? Yeah, if they're pulling advertising, let me throw in some money. And can I open a South African bank account online? Okay, guys, so here's what happened. Use a VPN, okay? Go to Twitter. Use a not invisible browser. What do they call it? Not in invisible mode. Just you're in private. Yeah, just a private browsing window with no cookies, right? So that it doesn't have cookies, right? So just use a private browsing window. Log into Twitter using a VPN that's in South Africa, right? It then says, "Hey, you're in South Africa. Do you want to pay?" Incognito mode, yeah, private mode or incognito mode. So I just logged in using a VPN coming from South Africa. And it charged me the South African price. It's simple. It just shows it to me in rands. And I paid with my credit card from Europe. Oh, not debit card. I paid with my debit card from Europe. Okay. And then I used I didn't use my South African number. Or did I? No, I used my Polish number. Sorry, I changed it. So, and then I put in my Polish phone number, mobile number, because they send you a text and they want the code, right? So then, but all I did was go use a VPN, say I'm from South Africa, or you can try India as well, but India has some weird banking laws, doesn't always work. So just do that. And then I gave them my Polish ID. They scanned my Polish ID and they said, fine, everything's verified, your number's verified, your ID's verified, we'll get back to you as soon as, I hope Twitter's not watching. Got the XYZ, you're right. Oh boy. So anyway, guys, try that. I often buy software that way. I will use a VPN. Okay, so as a trick, when you buy software, it doesn't always work, but use a VPN and come from Japan, India, or Mexico. Those are the cheapest countries. Occasionally South Africa, not always. But usually I use India as the country that I'm coming from. And then you'd be amazed, for instance, like software might cost $30, right? Then what happens is you use the VPN, you come from India, they'll show you the price in Indian rupees. The Indian price might be $5. I kid you not. You might pay $5 for a $30 piece of software. Or something might be $200 and you'll pay $60 in India. So do that. It's crazy how often you'll get it right. Not every time, but it happens. Okay, yeah, I used to do IT I used to work for an ISP back in the day when I was doing IT. I was a systems admin. I did Unix and databases and stuff. I'm no expert on databases, but I have a clue on Oracle and stuff. And anyway, so working for an ISP, I learned a lot of tricks. Okay, so anyway, look. So now our perspective is valid within Christian theology. It's not valid for people who don't accept Christian theology, right? It doesn't provide a logical proof. It's an explanation, but it's not a logical proof of the Trinity. It's something that we accept, all right? Just understand, it's something we accept. We say, look, our logic runs out at this point, right? Okay, so let's continue. So this is an acknowledgement of the limitations of human understanding in comprehending the nature of God. So the Logos in Christianity. Brief talk on the Logos. So God is Logos. He is the foundation of logic and reason. This idea has its roots in both Christianity, but also in Greek philosophy. The Logos, remember we also have the cosmos, right? Don't forget the Stoics also had a concept of the Logos, but it was a contradictory version of the Logos. Their theology, right, had contradictions in it that they couldn't reconcile, and they were known for this. We discussed this a couple of days ago when I did my talk when I spoke about the cosmos on my previous talk. Let me bring that up, actually, so that I can... give me 1 second. We did this live talk here. This one, scientific paganism. All right. So go to my talk on scientific paganism. I talk about the cosmos, which is the ordered universe, right? So this might be useful to you. So have a look at that. When I talk of atheism and materialism is scientific paganism, but also scientific paganism or atheism, materialism is really just a 6th century pagan idea. Thank you very much for hitting the likes. Much appreciated. All right. Okay, moving on. So the concept of Greek logos and cosmos are coupled together in a way, right? Logos is God the Son, the reason, or the Son is reason, logic, the divine word, right? The word must make sense. Hello, Rose and Crystals, welcome. So the creative force that structures the universe, right? This is what the Logos is, the creative force that structures the universe. And Jesus is reason, the Logos, the law. It is the intermediary between God and humanity. Jesus was the intermediary between God and humanity, embodying the link between God and logic. And this is the pre-existent second person of the Trinity, Jesus Christ. Yeah, sophistry does go off the charts. It does. So in John 1:1, it is stated, in the beginning was the Word, the Logos, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So God is logical. God is coherent. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. So the universe is structured on logic. It is predictable. It is coherent. So this should tell us something about the nature of God seen in the nature of the world. So in Greek philosophy, Logos described the ultimate reality and the universal divine reason that gives meaning to the universe. Because minds have purposes and minds have meaning. Matter has no meaning or intention. This is purely a characteristic of mind. God is mind, God has meaning. And this is the meaning of cosmos, a purpose-driven universe. This is the foundation of being, the source of divine ideas. So the Logos is considered an intermediary between the minds of God and humanity, illuminating the human mind with divine truth. We must use our reason. We must use our minds. We must think logically, because this is the bridge to start to understand faith, because faith needs reason so that faith can understand. Okay, faith is seeking understanding, and that was the aim of scholasticism. Faith seeking understanding. So this is the idea that birthed scientific revolution, that the world could be understood because God is reasonable God. Exactly. Very well said, Pedro. And also we have laws, scientific laws, because they believe that God was a lawgiver The universe ran on these logical, consistent, coherent laws. Thank you, Rose. Glad to hear it. So let's continue. So God as Logos has the idea of God as the foundation or source of logic, reason, and the creative force behind the universe. It represents the connection between God and humanity as the source of ultimate truth and meaning. So we acknowledge the limitations of reason, we acknowledge mystery, but we also don't abandon reason. So Logos, order and intelligibility. So Logos can be understood as reason, logic, or rationality. It is the principle that governs the universe and is responsible for the order and intelligibility. Because if things are logical, rational, they are intelligible. When someone speaks word salad, when you guys have all had discussions with Muslims online, you sit there like, what are they saying? Like, how? Please make it stop. Make it make sense. We've all been there because it's not intelligible. It's reasonable. Yes, we must be able to reason. You can reason your way through it. We are able to understand. So we also need the mind illuminated by faith to properly use the reason. I have said that. I've said that over and over and over. So, right. So to establish that God is Logos, we can reason as follows. The universe exhibits an order and an intelligibility. John Cody, welcome. Right. Order and intelligibility require a guiding principle or cause. So you have to have a mind. You have to have a purpose, right? Order is the result of a mind. Order only comes from mind, because if you don't have the cosmos, you have chaos. If you don't have a mind, you have disorder. And this is a metaphysical idea. The mind is not a physical piece of matter extending into space. It is something beyond matter. That's metaphysics. Now we go back to Aristotle versus materialism, like I said, scientific paganism. So this guiding principle or cause must possess reason or logos. It must be logical, must be rational. God, as supreme being, is the most plausible source of this guiding principle or cause, because materialism denies any such God. Whereas we say, hold on, it doesn't. If the source arose from creation, then if there's something contained within creation, it is merely that's pantheism. That just means you have something that came out of matter. It is just an extension of matter. It's just, right, as opposed to something that is outside and creates, that stands above and beyond matter. So therefore, it is not limited by matter itself. So God is supreme being, and this is the guiding principle. Therefore, God is the Logos. So this argument exhibits coherence and logical consistency. It adheres to the law of identity, the law of non-contradiction, and the law of the excluded middle. We don't have contradictions within this given framework. So you literally give your mind to the evil one if you deny truth. Actually, Roseanne, that's a really interesting point. So you literally give your mind to the evil one if you deny truth. Yeah, you deny the Logos. You deny God. So if God is truth, right? Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life, right? So you are opening yourself to permanent death. You will die and you will not go on to eternal life. You will go on to not know truth. If Jesus is the truth, then you are denying good. Evil is defined as the absence of good. So if you are denying the truth, you are denying the good. You are therefore denying Jesus, the Logos, and thus you are depriving yourself of good. So yeah, I guess that would make logical sense, I hope. Now, the sad thing is that proof is not persuasion. Bear this in mind. Proof is not persuasion. That idiot Muslim that I'm talking to on Twitter, I've given him the proof. He's denying the proof. I haven't seen the proof. Show me the proof. He'll redefine the proof. Understand? Proof is not persuasion. And people go, well, the truth will stand up for itself. It's like, really? Really? Genuinely? No one has to be courageous. No one has to speak the truth. No one has to stand up and say the truth. It's just going to do its own. You can just keep on eating your burger and bowling balls or whatever it is you do on weekends, and truth is going to take care of itself. No one has to actually work at it. No one has to do anything, because faith alone, right? We use our reason and misuse it depending on our relation to the truth. Yep. Okay, so now, proof is not persuasion. Let's have a look at the Logos. In the Bible, there are passages that indicate the importance of reason, rationality, and the role of the word in understanding. It will speak for itself. Like, I'm just going to go silent, and the truth will speak for itself now. No, it doesn't. Someone has to speak up. Jesus actually had to get off his throne, come down to earth, be born, grow up, and talk to people. March around a lot. Okay, wear out a few pairs of sandals. Or maybe not. But maybe he had magical sandals. But Jesus actually had to do the work. right? The apostles had to do the work. The early church had to do the work. You need to do the work, right? Jesus had to speak the truth. He had to speak the truth to people who knew were going to kill him. The apostles spoke the truth and got them killed, right? You need to do the work. The truth is not just going to do it. It might exist out there, but evil will triumph if you do nothing, right? I believe there's an old saying like that. All that requires for evil to succeed is that good men do nothing. So maybe someone's encouraging you to do nothing, and I have a problem with that. So it matters me to present the truth and face the audacity of what is proof. At times, pigs and dogs, yeah man. Sometimes it would be nicer if it was just a big fight and you can just punch him in the, because it's like, there's the proof, buddy. Faith without works is dead. Yes. So now let's have a look at the word logos in biblical usage. The main meaning, overwhelmingly within the Bible, at least. So, okay, the first meaning presented in the Bible, according to the Strong's lexicon, is the mind as a faculty of understanding. Also of feeling, also of desiring. So let's not forget, but the mind is a faculty of understanding. 2, understanding. So now you've got understanding times 2. Excellent. Understanding squared. So you need to understand. How do we understand? Well, we need to use our mind. We need to think. Then mind's spirit, way of thinking. Okay, a specific way of thinking. And then thoughts. Deep thought, properly, the faculty of mind or the disposition of mind, the exercise of mind. By implication, it's exercise, the exercise of the mind, the use of the mind. Not faith alone, not faith only, the use of the mind. Use your brain. The mind is the faculty of understanding. There you go, in the Greek, right? The mind is the faculty of understanding. So use your mind to understand. That's what the Bible tells me, so I'm going to go with that. But Isaiah 1:18, come now, let us reason together, says the Lord. Let us reason. Matthew 22:37, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind, called the dianoia. Proverbs 14:15, the simple believes everything, but the prudent gives thought to his steps. He thinks about the consequences of his actions. This verse emphasizes the importance of critical thinking and reasoning in making wise decisions. John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So the term logos is not explicitly used here, but it is referring commonly to Jesus Christ, who considered the Word. And Jesus embodies the divine reason and the communication of God. We communicate through words. Yeah, the baptism, didn't wash off, yeah. Excuse me, need to drink some water. Romans 1:20, now we talk about noeo, okay, and nous. Someone mentioned nous, right? For those of you, the word nous here is not referring to the practice of tying the noose, otherwise known as getting married. This is something a little different. So, for the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made. We are the things that are made. We understand the creation of God, right? Even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. That's talking to atheists and materialists, of course, to those who deny God. To perceive with the mind, to understand, to have understanding. So this is built into us. The idea, the ability to understand is built into us. To think upon, to heed, to ponder, to consider. That's the meaning of this, to have understanding. To think upon, to heed, to ponder, to consider. Not to dismiss, not to twist words, but to truly understand. So, noeo, okay? Noeo. Let's actually just go to this. I will bring this across here. Let me go back here. I need to enable this. I'm going to play the word for us.
Strong's G 3563. Nous.
Okay, and then we've got some other words that we'll have a look at. The mind compromising alike the faculties of perceiving and understanding, judging, determining. You are required to judge. You are required to understand. You have to practice your mind, right? And to exercise the mind, to observe, figuratively, to comprehend, to heed, to consider, to perceive, to think, to understand, right? So it comes from this word, right? So that word comes from this word, from nous. So this is a word related to nous. Okay, now let's go have a look here at... I'll bring it up in a moment, but I just want to play this.
Strong's G 3539. Naeo.
Okay, not ayo. Fine, there we go. To understand, 10 times it's used in the Bible. To perceive, to consider, to think. To perceive with the mind, to understand, to have understanding, to think upon, to heed, to consider. To exercise the mind, to observe, to comprehend. So understand, it's telling us you need to perceive, you need to understand, absolutely. You need to think. So we are being told in the Bible, like, try to think a little bit. The mind, hey, B, welcome. So in the mind, compromising alike, Dr. Jonathan Gemmell, most welcome, good to see you, thank you. So, like the faculties of perceiving and understanding, and those of feeling, judging, and determining, the intellectual faculty, the understanding. I see I didn't format this slide correctly. But understand, the mode of thinking and judging, thoughts, feelings, purposes, desires, to think about the things we do and why we do them. Nous, from the base, G1097, the intellect, mind, divine or human, in thought, feeling, or will. By implication, mind, understanding. So understand, we are really talking about mind and understanding. Let's have a look here at Romans 7:23. But I see another law. Where did we go? But I see another law in my members, warring against the law of my mind and bringing me into captivity to the law of sin, which is in my members. So we are not perfect. We've got a mind, and it struggles with sin. It struggles with, shall we say, emotions. But this is something I'll talk about when I do part 2 of my talk on materialism, which I'll do next week. And we'll actually discuss this. There's actually, quite oddly enough, there's a very strong scientific experiment which actually discusses this exact point. It actually verifies this. I'm not saying the Bible's a scientific book, you know? The Bible's actually scientific. No, I didn't say that. I'm saying there's actually a scientific experiment which actually verifies this. It's amazing. We'll discuss that. I thank God through Jesus Christ our Lord. So then with the mind, I myself serve the law of God, but with the flesh, the law of sin. So the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. There's actually a joke I read when I was a kid. It's like a guy was walking around a Scottish castle and he saw the famous Scottish ghost of the castle that no one had seen for a long time. And he said, "Do you mind if I take a picture?" And the ghost said, "Yeah, sure, go ahead." And the tourist took the picture, and then the picture was blank, just a wall behind it. And the tourist said to himself, the spirit was willing, but the flesh was weak. So it's given old joke a home week, okay? So anyway, so yeah. So understand the Bible talks about this. It talks about having the mind, using the mind, but also understanding the limitations of the mind. All right, so yeah. So, okay, different sciences and scientific methods. Goeienaand, Rick Bas, hoe gaan met jou? Okay, goeienaand mense, he says I'm late. Yeah, okay, well, yes, you're late. So, yeah. So maybe I should change the name to Theology and Comedy. I don't know. Who knows? I don't know if it's going to go down very well. It's like reason and theology, you know, God logic, and then like Lloyd's like theology and comedy. It's probably not. I don't think it's going to work. Okay, so according to Thomas Aquinas, I have typos. Like, good grief when I do this. I went through all these slides. I thought I'd fixed them all, but okay. So the term science had a broader meaning than we typically associate with the natural sciences today. Jocular theology. I like that, Vilnius. Okay, so Aquinas believed that every branch of knowledge, including philosophy, theology, mathematics, and natural sciences, were all sciences. He viewed science as a systematic study of reality. So there were methods to do science. For different topics, you had different methodologies, right? And these encompassed various fields of inquiry. So for philosophy, you'd have a different method of science than you would for mathematics or for engineering, let's say, all right? Aquinas believed that each science studies a different kind of reality. For example, philosophy focuses on the metaphysical and the ethical aspects of reality. Theology examines the divine and spiritual realities. Material sciences or chemistry would examine different aspects as well. These require different approaches to science, different kinds of science. Mathematics deals with abstract patterns and relationships. Natural sciences investigate the physical and natural world. So for Aquinas, each study has its own subject matter and its methods of inquiry, leading to distinct areas of study. This, again, distinctions. The word distinctions, differences, discrimination, separation, seeing what is different. Better comedy than late night shows, I'll tell you that much. Thank you, Pedro. Thanks, guys. I'm glad you like the humor. So metaphysics requires non-contradiction. The purpose of metaphysics is to ask about reality as a whole and to search out the features and causes of beings as such. Now, geometry has principles, metaphysics has principles. and a very important principle of metaphysics is that of non-contradiction. In one of its standard forms, the principle goes like this. It is impossible for something to be and not be at the same time in the same respect. We read and not read at the same time and in the same respect. You can't say the ball is completely red and not red, okay? Although there is one case where you can have that situation. For instance, it is possible to have something that is black and white and red all over. So, guys, here's your question. What is black and white and red all over? That's a contradiction. Or maybe not. What's black and white and red all over? I lost connection. Okay, sorry about that. Let's see. Do I have connection? Yeah, YouTube showing me excellent connection. Everything's in the green. It's showing me good connection. CPU 0.8%, 30 frames a second. Today's newspaper, Nicodemus. Yeah, that's a book. Yeah, okay, fine. You guys are a boring website. Yeah. Okay, yeah, it's given old joke a home week. Okay, these are jokes I read when I was 12. So, it's impossible for Socrates to exist and not exist at the same time. Yeah, okay, fine, moving on. So, Aristotle tells us that the principle of non-contradiction is a first principle. It cannot be proven, but it also doesn't need to be proven. It is self-evident to reason. Now, it's interesting that, according to Aristotle, some things cannot be proven. They have to be assumed. They have to be taken on faith, as it were. Right? Even atheists have to, oddly enough, take things on faith. It is a common principle, or an axiom and fundamental truth that underlies all disciplines and all investigations. If detectives working on a case were to find a set of clues that a suspect was at a store at 7 p.m. on Friday night, and they later find another set of clues that he was not at the store at 7 p.m. on Friday night, they would have to think through the clues to reconcile them. You have a contradiction. Is there a way to square the circle, or is there something else going on? So they would not hold the suspect was both at the store and not at the store. They would have to state, we have a contradiction. He was one of these, not both at the same time. Corpus Christi, welcome. You can't teach an old dad new jokes. Yeah, you're right. You're right. I'm gonna stick to the logic here. Okay, let me just stick to the logic, not go off script. In the back of all of our minds, we know that it is impossible that within our worldview. I really know the guy. I know the name, but just remind me what it was you're referring to. Yeah, everything's showing green. My connection is showing very strong. So, right. In terms of non-contradiction, you can have conflicting experiences of things, right? The quality of a movie, that's subjective. Okay, we're buffering badly. My connection here is showing strong. Yeah, YouTube is showing 100%. Everything is looking perfect on this end. I'm not seeing... Let me go have a look. Yeah. Yeah, guys, I'm losing connection. I see it, but no, YouTube is showing me 100% connection. YouTube is showing me perfect. So I can see that people are dropping off the stream because of it, because of the connection being so bad. I can see it's forcing people off the stream, but there's nothing I can do. It's looking perfect on my end. Yeah, maybe reset your computer, or just refresh your browser, or restart your browser. Okay, so yeah, otherwise I can just stop in a few minutes and just do the last few slides another day, in a couple of days. Okay, great. All right, so now look at a movie. You've got a situation where someone likes a movie, someone doesn't. That is not a contradiction. That is a preference, right? You might call that, in a sense, a bias, but a bias is not necessarily bad. It's just a preference, right? So there you have subjective beliefs. Now, there are certain things that are objective and things that are subjective. Now we make new categories. You've got some things that are subjective, like experiences are subjective. Perspectives can be subjective. The principle is about things, okay? Reality itself. Now, we do know that we have objective things as well. And these are things that sometimes there is no second opinion. That's the way it is. 1 + 1 is equal to 2. It's not equal to 3 entities or 5. So the principle of non-contradiction underlies all disciplines and all investigations. The basic rules of logic are critical. That rule of non-contradiction is critical. So we can learn from it something important about reality, which is reality is self-consistent. Therefore, God is consistent. God is self-consistent. There's logic, there's rationality. Therefore, logic is built into the universe. I hope that's a clear point, and I hope that you understand the value of that point, that you cannot simply dismiss logic. So when we say that reality is self-consistent, we are not saying it about this or that kind of thing, like whether you like a movie or whether the movie was good or whether the food was great. We're not saying about people, like someone likes Sally and someone doesn't like Sally, that whatever. Okay? This is about reality itself. We are saying it about all things, about beings as such on a metaphysical level, about reality as a whole. So this is a witness. This non-contradiction is a witness to what human beings can know about something. Okay? This is something solid about reality. God is good. Therefore, that is God's character, God's nature. That is a metaphysical reality. Right? So the opinions might vary, but that is what it is. So the great calling of philosophy and metaphysics is to speak about reality as a whole. The 10 Commandments. Yeah, what's that? Exactly. Allah. Mo broke all of them, right? So let me see. I've only got a few more slides. Hopefully not too many. Let me double check how many slides I have. We have, you know what? I can probably finish. I'll finish about 3 or 4 slides. Well, it will finish soon. Okay. The 3 fundamental laws of classical logic. To repeat a section I've done before. These are also known as the laws of thought, the law of identity. Everything is identical to itself. A man is a man, a dog is a dog, a cat's a cat, a woman's a woman. It can be expressed as A is A. The letter A is the letter A. The letter A is not the letter D. A man is not a woman. If A is true, then A is true. If 1 is 1, then 1 is 1, right? This law affirms that something is what it is not something else. For example, if we say the sky is blue, we're asserting that the sky is indeed blue, it's not another color. If God is good, God is good, God is not bad, God is not evil. Understand, this is built into the fabric of the universe. That's the metaphysic we just discussed. Therefore, God is logical, God is self-consistent, it is coherent. Rose, this reminds me of my logic class at university. Great. Hope it's making sense and it's interesting and valid in terms of when I do these things, I try to align them to theology. I try to align them to basically orthodox standard Christian theology. Right? If you've listened to Eckhart Tolle, this subject kind of reminds me of what he teaches. Yeah, but I've listened to some of his stuff, and isn't he a bit of a Gnostic? You know? So the law of non-contradiction. Non-contradiction tells us that a statement cannot be both true and false at the same time in the same context. We've already discussed a few examples of this. It can be expressed as A is not non-A. If A is true, then non-A is false, right? If 1 + 1 is equal to 2, it is not equal to 5. If a man is a man's not a woman. This law ensures logical consistency and excludes contradictions. For example, it is contradictory to say the car is in the garage and the car is not in the garage at the same time and in the same sense. What if A identifies as a D? Oh my God. Oh God. Oh, phew. I identify the A as an A. And because I'm black and I'm suffering from systemic oppression, and you are trying to colonize my mind with Western ideas, you are wrong, and therefore I am right because I am going to use my privilege to make the A. That's how that works. I'm just going to work on this whole pyramid of oppression thing here. So, beat you, buddy. So there you go. That's how that works. I understand the oppression Olympics, you know. So there, law of excluded middle. So the law of the excluded middle. The law of excluded middle states that for any given statement, either that statement is true or its negation is true. Pick one. Either you're pregnant or you're not pregnant. You're not like a little bit pregnant, half pregnant, kind of pregnant. Maybe you are. Pick one. 1 + 1 is equal to 2, or it's not equal to 2. Pick one. There's no middle here. There's no middle ground. It can be expressed as A or non-A. Either A is true or A is not true. Remember, this is not about movies, right, which are subjective opinions. We're talking about the underlying foundation of reality, the fundamental metaphysic of reality here, right? This law asserts that there's no middle ground or third option between a statement and its negation. So if you say the coin is either heads or tails, we're invoking the law of excluded middle. So when it falls flat on one side, It's either showing heads or it's showing tails. It's not showing both. It's not showing half. It's not showing... It's pick one. No middle ground. No third choice, right? So we're invoking the law of the excluded middle in this example. When you flip that coin and it lands flat, there you go. There are no other possibilities for the coin flip, right? Does this complement the law of thermodynamics? I'm just seeing an error 404 in my head, so I'll have to get back to you. So these three laws form the basis of classical logic, a framework for reasoning and evaluating the truth or falsehood of statements. And I think these are very Christian. Well, yeah, kind of according to Aquinas anyway. And it's logical, it's reasonable, it's coherent, it aligns with the Logos. These are accepted principles in the fields of logic, and it's the foundation for logical argumentation and deduction. Deduction. What is deduction? Three basic pillars of logic. Deduction is a form of reasoning. So this follows in drawing specific conclusions from general principles or premises. So we reach a specific conclusion from a set of general ideas and we narrow them down. So that pyramid does that. So it follows a top-down approach. If the premises are true, the conclusion must be true. Deductive reasoning looks for logical certainty. Right? For example, if all humans are mortal, that's our premise, and John is a human, that's a premise, then it can be deduced that John is mortal. Right? That's how that works. It makes cringe when people say they are spiritual. Yeah. Elementary, dear Watson. Actually, there's a story about that. So Watson and Holmes are at this place, and they're trying to figure out how someone got into a locked room. It's the locked room mystery, right? So Holmes goes out, closes the door. Watson's with him, and they're standing at the entrance to the door, and they're thinking, how did this guy get in? And Holmes takes his finger and he runs it over the door handle, and he licks his finger. And he goes, aha! Lemon entry, Watson. So, I should probably just stop telling jokes at that point. So let me just finish this. Induction. Induction is a form of reasoning that involves making generalizations or predictions based on specific observations. So now we went from the general to the specific. Now we're going from the specific to the general. Right? So we have a bottom-up approach. That's what that means. So you've got specific instances are observed, and conclusions or generalizations are drawn. Man, I'm on a roll. Yeah, I just thought I was being ridiculous myself. Okay, so these are different ways of approaching things. So we can make deductions or inductions. Okay, so for example, you can see multiple instances of ice melting at a particular temperature. So you can generalize this idea and say, hey, all ice melts at that temperature. Then we can figure out what the temperature is. So that's induction. Then you have abduction, third form, not commonly discussed. This is a form of reasoning that involves inferring the most plausible explanation or hypothesis to account for a set of observations or evidence. It often described as reasoning to the best explanation. Right, there's a couple of names for it actually. So reasoning to the best explanation or inference. There's numerous ways of describing it. I've seen others, but abductive reasoning involves making an educated guess or inference based on limited information, with the goal of finding the most likely or the most reasonable explanation. So for example, if you come home to find the front door open and muddy footprints on the floor, you infer that someone entered your house without removing the shoes due to the available evidence. Right? So I think you understand, we can think of examples of this in our own life. Now, inconsistent information. How do we deal with inconsistent information? I'll try and finish, but to be honest, I didn't properly finish my slides, so I really should not go too much further because, okay. Let me just try and finish, actually, even though my slides are not 100%. So, Lloyd, you must have become a dad and got his joke license. Abduction. I know what I saw. The aliens did it, right? Yeah. Great jokes. Thank you, Dr. Jonathan Gemmell. Okay. Inconsistent information. What do we do with inconsistent information? The world is inherently complex and ambiguous, right? The world is ambiguous, and you have what's called paraconsistent logic. And this tries to handle contradictions with discernment. So we have contradictions. How do we reconcile these difficult situations, right? That are not clear-cut. Classical logic treats contradictions as leading to trivial or absurd conclusions. Paraconsistent logic creates a framework for reasoning about inconsistent information without lapsing into inconsistency. So it doesn't reject information that goes against its conclusions. It says, hold on, wait, hang on. Maybe there's a third premise I don't know about. Maybe there's a piece of information I'm not aware of. Maybe there's something that makes these two things fit, but I'm missing that. So instead of rejecting data, it says, wait, let's have a look. So contradictions can arise in various contexts. You can deal with inconsistent information or conflicting information. You can have the wrong information. So now you've got to be patient and see, is the information wrong? Is my conclusion wrong? Am I being fed bad info? Is my measurement wrong? Something. So you, rather than treating contradictions as errors or inconsistencies to be thrown out, this kind of logic embraces them as meaningful, and they are valuable elements of the logical framework that you use for further reasoning. You now need to make inductions, deductions, or inferences. There's the principle of explosion. In classical logic, we just went through those laws of logic. A contradiction leads to the principle of explosion. Okay? Ex contradictione quod libet. Where any proposition can be derived from a contradiction. So in non-contradictory logic, the principle of explosion is rejected. So if someone says, what do you get if you cross a banana with a piece of cheese? An alien, okay? Because it's not an argument, okay? Like, what if a duck is crossed with a gamma ray? It's like, that makes no sense. So you can say anything. That's the principle of explosion. An erroneous premise or two erroneous premises can lead to any conclusion, literally anything. It doesn't matter because it doesn't make sense anyway. What you want is, how can I take these seemingly erroneous premises and try to make sense of it? Maybe there's something I need to do to connect the dots here, right? So what happens is you are required to consider the implications. If a contradiction is present, any arbitrary statement can be proven true. So yes, true, but now when you think, hold on, is there something missing? Let's look at proposition P, it is raining. Not P, it is not raining. These are contradictory. So you can assert that it is raining, and the other one asserts it is not raining. So with the principle of explosion, we can derive any proposition. It's Tuesday. Great, we're in Paris. Doesn't matter, right? Or we can derive proposition Q. The moon is made of cheese. Elephants can fly. This statement has no logical connection to the original contradiction. That's from the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, by the way, just so you know. Okay? But sometimes we need to be patient with contradictions. Principle of relevance. Non-contradictory logic emphasizes the relevance of information. When you say, did you steal the cookies, Jamie? And he says, Mommy, it was, my friend Johnny was here yesterday, and we were playing, right? And like, what does that have to do with? It's a yes or no question. You've seen politicians do it. You ask them a question, they mention irrelevancies. Like, just answer the bloody question. Will you just yes or no? And they go on, well, we are always standing ready to provide answers that will be satisfactory to those that we serve. And like, did you do? Our department has the highest standards, and we are always looking to serve the population. And like, just get yes or no. Did you shoot the man in the head? We have always preached that having self-discipline and control is very important, and that one always needs to, have stricter gun laws. And then we just feel that this is a position that we've, like, Senate hearings, exactly. So we have to distinguish between relevant and irrelevant contradictions. Is this a relevant contradiction? Sure, it's bad info, but is it relevant? Is it just something we don't understand yet? Right? We need to focus on the consequences derived from relevant contradictions while disregarding or downplaying irrelevant contradictions. What is genuinely irrelevant needs to be tossed out. What could be relevant while contradictory, we need to maintain. So we need to think carefully about data. Principle of multiple valuations. Yeah, they give you irrelevant speeches rather than answer. Exactly, the word salad that hides the meat of the truth. Yes. So instead of the classical binary notion of true or false, propositions in non-contradictory logic can have truth values ranging from true, false, to unknown or undetermined. Now we're widening our scope. I spoke of a wider scope earlier when I spoke of the penguins, right? So now you've got a more nuanced representation, not in the manipulative sense, but in the genuine sense the word nuanced is meant. You've got uncertain or contradictory information. So usually you need more data or a better premise, right? You need a better framework or better data. Distracting language. Islam loves this, yes. Then you've got the principle of rational inference. Non-contradictory logic aims to provide a rational and consistent framework for making inferences, drawing conclusions. So you've got certain premises, you've got certain data, and you're trying to draw a conclusion based on what is reasonable, what is logical, what is sound, what fits the data, what is rational within our view, right, within the world. So you're working within the presence of contradictions, but you're trying to make a leap, right? And it allows for controlled reasoning with contradictory information, because not everything is black and white in the world, all right? So the principle of coherence, and this is very important. That's why it's in red. You're very welcome, Rose. Non-contradictory logic tries to achieve coherence in reasoning by capturing and preserving the internal consistency of a logical system, even in the presence of contradictions. So, like Muslims will give you a lot of lies. So you've got contradictions. So you need to say, okay, fine, we've got this contradiction. We need more data to figure this thing out. So this focuses on maintaining logical relationships between propositions and ensuring that reasoning processes remain coherent, because they will try to make you incoherent, right? They're baffling you with BS. That's what they're doing. So these principles are the foundation of non-contradictory logic. Remember the coherence. Remember your purpose. Remember, does this fit together? Don't deviate from the sense, the rationality, right? So we need to use this, and it's used in technology, it's used in chemistry, used in physics, used in science, in maths, and it's used in thinking. It's used in day-to-day problem solving, right? So we need to develop a way of dealing with contradictions. Not every contradiction is necessarily falsehood or dishonesty. There could be bad data, a misunderstanding, a glitch, something, right? Be patient sometimes. Right? Life is not that simple that you can just say yes or no to everything. Not everything is that black and white. Okay. Now, I think we've covered this before, so I don't really have to mention this. But, so, yeah, okay. I have covered cherry picking elsewhere. 2, 3, 4, 5. So, guys, I have 5 more slides. Should I finish the 5 slides? Yeah, these are 5 more slides, right? I think I'll finish them. I didn't quite format them, but should I do them or another time? Okay, let's finish them. So these arts, okay, the trivium we spoke of previously last week, right? Grammar, logic, rhetoric. These are essential to a good education. You need to know grammar. Grammar is your vocabulary. Do you have a good vocabulary? Can you describe things clearly? Are you able to make rational sentences that clearly communicate? So now we're trying to understand and then communicate. So that's grammar, right? Grammar also involves vocabulary. Then logic. Are your arguments sound? Are your premises sound? Do they fit together rationally? And rhetoric, are you persuasive? All right, that's rhetoric. So we need all 3 things. Many people focus heavily on rhetoric. They forget grammar and logic, and they will just baffle you with nonsense. That's the Muslim way, right? I wanted to take a class on this a few months ago, and now God has answered my prayer through COVID and a cell phone. Great stuff, Fernie. Very nice. Okay, so these are essential to good education. They provide a framework for teaching and learning that emphasizes critical thinking. You cannot have critical thinking without grammar, logic, and rhetoric. You need effective communication. Can you communicate your ideas? Do you understand them yourself? Can you communicate them to you? And then can you communicate them to others? And this allows you to maintain lifelong learning. So grammar is the foundational knowledge and skills that you need to acquire in order to understand a subject. Vocabulary. Do you have a good vocabulary? Okay. Kegi, back home now, where I come from, everyone is most talking like this, man. So the people in my neighborhood, they always talk like this. And a man don't know what's going on, man. Like, it's like they talk to you, and you're like, yeah, no, what did that brass say, man, bro? Man, it's most like, what is this? That's how people talk back home where I come from. Understand? This is not going to get you into university, and this is not going to get you that MBA or that PhD. That's going to get you not very far in life. The colored accent, my bro. Yeah, man, no. A man must have to go to school, man. And then I must learn how to be educated, no? And then I must learn all that words, and then the dictionary, and a man had to read, and now I can even write and everything, man. It's most lekker. Now I'm like educated, my bro. Yo, you must see the books I can read now. I can read a comic now in 10 minutes. 10 minutes, I'm telling you. Yeah, the colored accent. That's how I grew up, just so by the way. Understand, this actually is a mental trap, okay? Thinking like this, not having good logic and good grammar, not having good grammar, not having a good vocabulary traps you in a very certain way, okay? If you want to improve your understanding of the world, your manipulation of the world, I don't mean that in a bad way, but your ability to deal in the world, you have to upgrade your vocabulary. You have to upgrade, and this means you have to upgrade your thinking, right? Once you introduce concepts, you need words for those concepts, because those concepts do not exist as far as you're concerned if you don't have the words for them. Once you have the words for them, you can then start to manipulate those concepts in your mind. You start to see nuance, you start to see details, you start to make distinctions, you discriminate between right and wrong, and you start to see shades. So now you can be very precise. This leads to precision, but the lack of precision is going to hold you back. And this is where grammar is critically important. Logic is also important for analyzing data and coming to clear conclusions. Right, so logic or dialectic is questioning and analysis. You need to encourage students to think about what they've learned and engaged in critical thinking, right? Rhetoric is about effective communication. So you've got critical thinking, questions, the right questions are asking the wrong questions. The wrong questions will give you the wrong answers. That's a really simple understanding. Wrong questions equals wrong answers. That's simple. Rhetoric is effective communication. Help students express ideas clearly and persuasively. Use your language well. Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. Okay? Of course, if you spoke badly, your grammar was bad. It's like, friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. You know, but we don't want to go there. Moving on. Should have seen my face the first time I went to Boston. Was totally wicked, the adjective of choice, apparently. Okay, together, these three components are a very powerful tool for education. And this helps students develop wisdom, virtue, and a good life. Okay? Rhetoric on its own is used to deceive. Understand this. Rhetoric is fallacious. It is used to lie. It is a very powerful propaganda tool, right? It can be used to manipulate and deceive people without a solid foundation in grammar and dialectic or logic, right? Rhetoric is used to obscure the truth. It is used to promote false idea. Then Caesar cutteth all their ears. Yeah, so therefore, it is important for students to have a well-rounded education, includes all three components of the trivium to become effective communicators who are also critical thinkers. Logic and dialectic. Yeah, I forgot to format this slide. Yeah, okay. So dialectic can be used to analyze a poem or a work of literature by asking questions about the meaning, the structure, and the themes. If you weren't aware of these words, which are part of the grammar, that there is such a thing as meaning, structure, and themes, that's grammar, you wouldn't be able to discriminate, you wouldn't be able to analyze, you wouldn't be able to dissect this thing into its constituent or component parts. So you are limiting your appreciation of the world. You're limiting your understanding. You're affecting your own intelligence here. Your ability to understand, perceive, analyze, dissect, reassemble, and then, improve upon. That's all missing because you lack grammar. So this is critical, and we need to improve our vocabularies. We need to, and then our thinking. So we need to approach these. We need to go back to what was happening. If you think about this, what I'm talking about here, this was standard. This was normal stuff for 16-year-olds in the Middle Ages. 16-year-olds in the Middle Ages were learning this. Now you've got people who's doing their PhDs who can't even think straight. I mean, this is scary stuff. People come out of high school, they can't read properly at a third grade level. And this is what 16-year-olds were doing 800 years ago. So, or 500 years ago. So dialectic can also be used to evaluate arguments and evidence to determine validity and reliability. So we need to be able to dissect arguments, right? So, sorry, yeah, you know what? Yeah, I was still busy working on this. So we need to ask questions. We also need to engage in meaningful, not the Hegelian dialectic. That's different. The Hegelian dialectic is a process. Okay, thesis, antithesis, or antithesis, and then synthesis. That's just I punch you, you fall down, and there's no synthesis. It's just who's left standing. That's just fancy garbage. Understand? They assume that two opposites, two contradictories, would create a synthesis, a harmony. That's not true, because they're lying to themselves as well. Because within the Hegelian dialectic, within that whole materialist historical materialism, you had different stages, right? So you had the primitive stage, you had the what do they call it? The primitive, not the pagan stage, but when people had primitive beliefs, right? There's a word for that. And then, of course, you had the organized religion, like the Christianity stage, and then you've got the scientific stage. The problem is that the Christian stage destroys because it's superior to the primitive stage, right? And then you've got this new scientific stage that destroys the Christian stage. So there is no synthesis. There's only a destruction, because communism or socialism is not BC. People who believe in we're primitive people. We believe in spirits and believe in gods and all that. superstitious. The socialists called the superstitious phase. Then you had the organized religious phase. Then you had the scientific phase, and then you have the communist phase. Right? There's these 4 stages you go through. And the problem is that you destroy the previous phase because it's evil, it's inferior, it's crap, it's nonsense, it's got to go. So there is no synthesis. There's just the destruction. So they're trying to make it sound appealing so that you'll do it because you think it's going to be great. But really, you are simply just destroying what came before. It's just destruction of the previous because it's evil, it's woke, and it's white supremacy and it's Western colonization. We have to decolonize. That's exactly what it is. So we can implement this particular crazy idea. So there are Socratic seminars people talk about where they discuss a text or issue in depth. They ask each other questions to clarify understanding. This was common back in the day, right? With the Greeks, with the Romans, with the scholastics. This is not something that we have commonly today, right? Meaningless dialogue, we have a lack of substance, a lack of purpose, and it's unproductive and harmful. Right, I think that was a new slide I added in, and I forgot to edit that one. So clearly that's why it's not formatted. Nicodemus says, how does the definition fit into this discussion? The Marxian process of change through the conflict of opposing forces. It's jihad. It's jihad. That's all it is. Socialist ideology is by definition violent. It preaches violence. Violence to overcome the old system, to introduce the new system. It is definitionally violent. It is jihad. It is no different. It is using force, using violence, using death to bring the new. So that's all it is. That's what the socialism. I mean, if you look at my studies, my series on socialism and atheism, that covers that. Whereby a given contradiction is characterized by a primary and a secondary aspect, the secondary succumbing to the primary, which is then transformed into an aspect of a new contradiction. Yeah, does that make any sense? When they say transform, they mean you destroy it. You overcome it. You conquer it. You kill it. And then you have the new idea, and you take what is useful, utilitarianism, right? And then you move on. But this is... And the whole idea of contradiction, you remember, if they are embracing contradictions, they are by default not logical. They're rejecting the logos. They're rejecting basic logic. So some of the final phase is supposed to be good. Exactly. Yeah, everyone blames the patriarchy. Exactly so. And you need to get books on Socrates and Aquinas. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you can read... there must be something on... Man, let me ponder that. You know, there will be some stuff on the internet. I watch videos. Oh, go to Aquinas101.com. They have videos on YouTube. The Aquinas Institute, Aquinas101.com. Check them out. You will own nothing and you will be happy, as they say. Exactly. Okay, let's finish up here, guys. So, clever but false arguments. That's sophistry, especially with the intention of deceiving. Rhetoric is fallacious because it leads to manipulation and deception. That's sophistry. Sophistry is rhetoric, and this rhetoric relies on misleading and false arguments to persuade others. Sophistry takes many forms: emotional appeals, false analogies, cherry picking, etc., etc. You've all seen it. You've all seen this with Muslims, right? Solid knowledge of grammar and dialectic is essential for avoiding sophistry and developing effective communication skills. Do understand your enemies have excellent communication skills. They might even be better than you. They've studied this stuff for the purpose of using it to deceive, to lie, and to beat you at your own game. Do understand that. Through dialectic, students can learn how to evaluate arguments and evidence. But so are your enemies doing this. You need to be better than them. Excellent. Thank you, Lilo Main. Thank you, Cetos, for the purchase. Okay, yeah, so moving on. Emotional appeal. Let's have a look at what is emotional appeal. Gun control! Get vaccinated! Racism! Yeah, that's emotional appeal. A politician or health official uses emotionally charged language to describe the dangers of a particular blah, 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 like the COVID-19, to convince people that they need to get, okay, whatever. They argue that the failure to get vaccinated is traitorous and you're not serving your country. You're going to kill Granny. You're going to kill Granny. You'll kill Granny. That's scientific right there. That's, yeah. Okay. You're not doing your part to serve the public health. You're going against the public good. You horrible person. So understand, they're using fear to force you to do something. This is not logical reasoning. There's no evidence. We know now they were wrong. The evidence proves this was all wrong. But that's what they did. And that's sophistry. Yeah, I don't want the YouTube police on my head. Yeah. So it is important for individuals to evaluate arguments based on validity and reliability rather than swayed by emotional appeals. Truth before everything. Truth über alles, if you want to put it that way. false analogies. Okay, last page, final page. Good grief, my voice is going. As you can see, guys, give me 1 second, please. I will need to do something. Please give me a moment. I'll be right back. Okay, good grief, I'm back. I went longer than expected. I do apologize. And I need to reset my camera. Where is my... Great. Sorry, let me just reset my... Hello, camera. I hate when it does that. The doorbell rang. I had to go answer the door. I went much longer than expected. Okay, final page, guys. Final page, and we are done. Yeah, I'm back. So the internet police was sent after me. Okay, so the analogy drawn between Jews and rats during Holocaust, that's a false analogy. Nazi propaganda depicted Jews as vermin that needed to be exterminated, using images of rats and other pests to dehumanize them. This is a false analogy to justify mass murder, right? And other minorities, they killed a lot of people. So you don't mind if I go long? Oh, great. Okay, well. So the comparison of African Americans to apes, we saw that in my discussion on Darwin. They literally compared black people to apes and monkeys and other non-human animals, who has been used as a false analogy to justify racism and discrimination. So eugenics, controversial, discredited movement. Okay, this sought to improve the human gene pool through selective breeding and sterilization. And we know what the arguments were about that. Okay, I've covered that as well recently in my Hitler series and others. So eugenicists believe that certain groups of people were genetically inferior and must be prevented from reproducing to improve the overall quality of the human race. So it's just a clump of cells, isn't it? It's just a clump of cells, right? These are false analogies, right? These are very difficult to deal with. You need to expect them. You need to know them. You need to be prepared for them. You have to have better arguments designed in advance, and you also need to use not just logic. You need to use rhetoric. You need to undermine. You need to embarrass. You need to ridicule as well. You need to use humor. Sometimes you have to embarrass your enemy. You have to beat them over the head, right? You can't always win through logic. So the belief is based on flawed and biased scientific theories that have been debunked. So eugenicists didn't necessarily make false analogies, but their beliefs were based on faulty assumptions and biased interpretations of scientific data. But what they do is, because they've got bad data, and they often know they've got bad data, they often know that they cannot win through good arguments, they are then going to lean into these false analogies. They're going to lean into sophistry and this use of rhetoric, these basic strategies of utilizing sophistry, rhetoric, right? They're going to do this. You need to be prepared for this. Muslims do it all the time. They've got lots of practice. Never play their game. Always have a different argument, right? Always have a way to show them up. So eugenics is discriminatory, right? It is incredibly racist. It is highly unethical. It is death, right? It's a death cult. Now, it was something that was deemed, a war crime. And now it's just any Tuesday in Canada, right? So people were forced to go and off themselves in sterilization clinics and others, right? People were declared unfit to reproduce. And these people with disabilities or those from certain racial ethnic groups were targeted for termination, right? And this is exactly what's happening in Canada and other places today. So this legacy of eugenics is felt today, right? And it's still something that sits with us today. This is Darwinism. This is the legacy of Darwinism. This is Darwin's idea. Now, guys, so I will finish here. That's it from me. But understand that bad thinking leads to this kind of thing. Good thinking takes us away. Jesus never spoke about things like this. When you read Martin Luther actually stated that there was a boy that was disabled. Martin Luther stated that this boy has no soul, he's not even a human, he should be killed. He stated that the boy should be smothered to death with a pillow, or the boy should be taken to the river and drowned because he was worthless. This statement of Martin Luther's was used by the Nazis. Now understand, if you are using the Logos, if you are trying to use the mind of God, so really, all of this is we're trying to find as much as we can as humans to be like the mind of God, to be correct. How can we be correct? By being moral. Because correct thinking has a moral dimension. Martin Luther came to these ideas because he clearly was not correct. Simple as that, right? So Yeah, that Martin Luther quote. Yeah. So Martin Luther was a murderer. Martin Luther was not a good man by any stretch of the imagination. The opposite to Jesus. Thanks, Villainous. You've made my point for me. I appreciate that. Jesus would never have done something like that. Martin Luther did. Now, they all point to another situation where Martin Luther was kind to poor people or kind to whatever, a woman with a broken leg or whatever. Okay, great. So he was nice to the one on the one day, but he murdered the other one on the other day. It's like, so we should ignore the murder because he only killed one person? It's like he's not a murderer because he only murdered one person? Like, is that okay? Like, no. So guys, that's it from me. Radical people implementing Darwinistic cleansing with eugenics and abortion. Yeah, these were Darwin's ideas. Darwin opened the door to this. Darwin was a eugenicist. Muslims love to debate. None want to do a discussion, which is why I only ask for discussions and why they won't do debates. I mean, why they won't meet me. They won't. They'll say yes, sure, and then they'll run away because they know what will happen to them. Yeah, so guys, that's it from me. I hope this has been educational. Hope you've learned something valuable. I should have cleaned up my slides, but I will clean these up tomorrow and make them available to everyone. I hope this has been useful and that you can use this information. Of course, that's what I hope you'll do. So guys, thank you. That's it from me. Thank you for spending the time with me. It's an hour 45, but it's been great. And on Sunday, we'll be talking about Palestine, Soviet Palestine, the Soviet experiment. I just saved you thousands of dollars in tuition. Fantastic. So guys, thank you very much, and we'll see you soon. Good night.